Chapter 1. The Widow's Lament. Rain lashed against the grimy windows of Detective Adrian Cole's office, the rhythmic patter masking the uneasy silence between him and the woman seated across his desk. Evelyn Harper's hands trembled as they clutched a faded photograph of a man and a boy, their faces blurred by time and grief. Her voice cracked like dry parchment. "They were murdered, Detective. My Charles and Thomas, buried in separate graves. But no one believes me." Adrian leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath his weight. At 45, his reputation for unraveling the unsolvable was matched only by his skepticism of tearful pleas. Yet there was something in Evelyn's hollow stare, a desperation that went beyond delusion. He glanced at his assistant, Dr. Martin, who stood by the bookshelf thumbing through a medical journal. Martin's raised eyebrow confirmed his own suspicion. This isn't just grief. "The police closed the case months ago," Adrian said, tapping the file on his desk. Autopsy reports listed Charles Harper's death as a heart attack and his 16-year-old son Thomas as a drowning. "What makes you think it wasn't an accident?" Evelyn's knuckles whitened. Charles didn't have a heart condition, and Thomas, he hated the sea. He'd never go near the cliffs alone. She slid a crumpled letter across the desk, the ink smudged by salt water, or tears. "Final notice," glared from the top. The bank was going to take everything, but Charles swore he'd fix it. Then he died. Then Thomas. Now the debt's gone. Gone, Detective, because the creditors think we're all dead. Adrian's fingers stilled on the paper. Coincidences were rare in his line of work. He studied the dates on the graves. Charles buried in January, Thomas in March. 6 weeks apart. Too convenient for a double tragedy. Too tidy for life. Raven's Hollow Cemetery loomed at the edge of town, its iron gates snarled with ivy. The groundskeeper, a hunched figure named Mr. Fletcher, eyed Adrian and Martin with suspicion as they approached the twin graves. "Ain't right disturbing the dead," he muttered, but a crisp bill from Adrian's wallet loosened his grip on the shovel. The first coffin emerged with a groan, Charles Harper's name etched into the lid. Martin adjusted his glasses, kneeling to examine the hinges. No scratches. If the body were inside, the wood would have warped by now. His gloved hands pried it open. Empty. Evelyn let out a choked cry, collapsing to her knees. I saw them, lowered myself. I saw it." Adrian said nothing, his gaze shifting to Thomas' grave. The earth there was fresher, the headstone smaller. A teddy bear lay wilted against it, rain soaking its matted fur. The second coffin, when unearthed, was lighter, too light for a teenager. Martin pried it open. Empty. "They're alive," Adrian murmured. The pieces clicked, the erased debt, the staged deaths, the widow's grief. But Evelyn's shock seemed genuine. Too genuine. Unless... A thunderclap split the sky as Mr. Fletcher staggered back, pointing a gnarled finger at Evelyn. You did this. You and your no-good brother, always skulking around here at night." Evelyn's face paled. "My brother is dead." "Liar," Fletcher spat. "Saw him 2 weeks ago digging near the cliffs. Had a boy with him, looked just like your Thomas." The wind howled as Adrian turned to Evelyn, but she was already running, her black coat billowing like a shadow into the storm. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Storm. The rain had turned Raven's Hollow into a watercolour of greys by the time Adrian and Martin reached the cliffs. Evelyn Harper's footprints had vanished in the mud, swallowed by the storm. Detective Cole gripped the rusted rail overlooking the churning sea, his trench coat flapping like a wounded bird. Below, jagged rocks bit into the waves, the same rocks that had supposedly claimed Thomas Harper's life. "She couldn't have gone far," Martin shouted over the wind, his usually immaculate hair plastered to his forehead. "Not in this." Adrian didn't answer. His eyes traced the edge of the cliff, where a frayed length of rope dangled from a weather-beaten post. Too new to have been here since March, too deliberate to be an accident. He crouched, brushing his fingers over the rope's severed end. Clean cut, not snapped by weight. Martin joined him, squinting. Someone wanted it to look like a fall. A memory flickered in Adrian's mind. Evelyn's brother, mentioned by the groundskeeper. Dead, she had claimed. But Fletcher had seen him digging near the cliffs. Alive. We need to find her brother. If he's the one faking deaths, he will know where Evelyn is. The Harper house stood at the end of Willow Lane, its once grand facade crumbling under ivy and neglect. A foreclosure notice hung crookedly on the door, its edges fluttering in the wind. Adrian shouldered it open, the scent of mildew and rot rushing out. Inside, peeling wallpaper revealed water stains in the shape of continents. Martin shone his flashlight over a staircase missing half its steps. Charming. Adrian moved to the study, where a mahogany desk lay buried under unopened bills. He sifted through them. Loan statements, threats from creditors, final notices stamped with a black insignia. Vermilion Financial. The dates clustered in the weeks before Charles Harper's death. They were drowning long before the sea got involved, Adrian muttered. He yanked open the desk drawer. Beneath a stack of faded photographs, a younger Evelyn, laughing beside a man with her sharp cheekbones and stormy eyes, lay a key stamped with a bank logo. Martin peered over his shoulder. Safety deposit box? Or a locker? Adrian pocketed the key. Let's pay Vermilion a visit. Vermilion Financial's office was a glass and steel monolith in the heart of the city, its lobby buzzing with suited employees who eyed Adrian and Martin like trespassers. The manager, a skeletal man named Mr. Greer, adjusted his tie as they approached. The Harper account is closed. Privacy laws forbid me from... Adrian slapped the foreclosure notice on the desk. Privacy doesn't cover fraud, or conspiracy to commit it. Greer's smile tightened. Conspiracy is a strong word, Detective. The Harpers owed us $250,000. Charles swore he would repay it, even offered collateral. What collateral? A family heirloom. A 17th century pocket watch. Worthless, as it turned out. Stolen from a museum years ago. Greer leaned forward, his breath smelling of mint and malice. The rain had slowed to a drizzle when they reached the train station, its lockers rusted and graffiti scarred. Adrian slid the key into box 114. Inside lay a leather journal, its pages filled with Charles Harper's frantic handwriting. March 12th. They threatened Thomas, told me they'd make him disappear if I didn't pay. I can't lose him. I won't. March 15th. Evelyn's brother, Daniel, has a plan. Says we can outrun them, fake our deaths, start over. But how do I leave her behind? Martin frowned. Evelyn didn't mention being part of this. Adrian flipped to the last entry, dated the night before Charles' burial. They know. God help us, they know. A shadow moved in the corner of Adrian's vision. He spun, but the station was empty, save for a wet footprint on the tile, smaller than a man's. The groundskeeper's cottage reeked of gin and damp earth. Mr. Fletcher answered on the third knock, his bloodshot eyes widening at the sight of Adrian's badge. I told you everything already. You said you saw Evelyn's brother digging near the cliffs, Adrian said, stepping inside. Where? Fletcher gulped. East side, by the old lighthouse. But he ain't alone. There is a kid with him. Wears a red hoodie, face always hidden. Thomas. Adrian's pulse quickened. When? Last night. They was loading boxes into a boat. I tried to follow, but... He trailed off, staring at the detective's coat pocket. Adrian followed his gaze. A folded slip of paper jutted from the fabric, one he hadn't put there. He opened it. Stop digging, or the next graves won't be empty. The message was typed. The paper smelled of salt and copper. Back at the car, Martin examined the note under his penlight. No fingerprints, but the inks smudged. Printers low on toner. Likely a local shop. Adrian gripped the steering wheel. First Evelyn runs, now threats. Someone's panicking. Or someone wants us to panic. Martin hesitated. What if the brother's not the villain here? What if he is protecting them? The lighthouse loomed ahead, its beams slicing through the fog. Adrian killed the engine. Let's ask him. They crept through the underbrush, the beam guiding them to a dilapidated boathouse. Voices echoed inside, a man's gruff tone and a younger, readier one. "Told you this was a mistake," the younger voice hissed. "We're almost clear," the man replied. "One more payment and we're gone." Adrian kicked the door open. "Payment to who?" Two figures froze, a broad-shouldered man with Evelyn's eyes and a teenager in a red hoodie. Daniel Harper and Thomas. Alive. Thomas stumbled back, his hood falling to reveal a face identical to the photo in Adrian's pocket. Daniel stepped forward, a knife glinting in his hand. "You shouldn't be here, Detective." "Neither should you," Adrian said, nodding at Thomas. "How long did you think you could hide?" Daniel's laugh was bitter, long enough to get Evelyn out. "She didn't know, you understand? Charles thought the faked deaths would buy time. But they kept coming, so I stepped in." "Who's they?" A gunshot rang out. Daniel collapsed, blood blooming across his chest. Thomas screamed as shadows surged from the trees. Men in black masks, their weapons raised. Adrian tackled Martin behind a stack of crates as bullets tore through the wood. "Vermilion's collectors!" "Go!" Daniel choked, tossing Adrian a USB drive. "The proof's here. Get Thomas to safety." Another shot. Daniel went still. Adrian grabbed Thomas's arm, dragging him toward the car as the masked men gave chase. "They will kill us all," Thomas sobbed. "Not tonight," Adrian growled. The engine roared to life, tires spitting gravel. In the rear-view mirror, the lighthouse beam flickered, then went dark. Chapter 3. The Inheritance Gambit. The safe house was a cramped apartment above a butcher shop, the air thick with the metallic tang of raw meat. Thomas Harper sat hunched on a moth-eaten sofa, his red hoodie soaked through from the rain. Adrian tossed him a towel, watching as the boy scrubbed at his face, not just to dry it, but to erase the memory of his uncle's body hitting the ground. "They will find us here," Thomas muttered, his voice raw. "They always find people." Dr. Martin adjusted the blinds, peering down at the deserted street. "Not if we are smart. How long has Vermilion been after your family?" Thomas flinched at the name. "Since Dad borrowed money to save the house. He thought he could pay it back. But the interest..." He trailed off, fingers digging into the towel. "Uncle Daniel said faking our deaths was the only way. Mum didn't know, not at first. When she found out, she lost it. Started telling everyone we had been murdered." Adrian leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Why separate graves? Why not bury both coffins together? To make it look real. Dad's heart attack first, then me drowning weeks later. Vermilion bought it. The debt got written off." Thomas' laugh was hollow. "Until you started digging." Martin pulled the USB drive from his pocket. "The one Daniel had died for. What's on this?" Thomas palmed it, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Proof. Dad recorded meetings with Vermilion's boss, names, account numbers. But there's something else." He hesitated. "A trust fund from my grandfather. It unlocks when I turn 18. If I'm dead, it goes to Vermilion." Adrian stilled. "How much?" "5 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. Adrian snatched the drive. "They're not just collectors, they're inheritance thieves." The hacker's lair was a neon-lit basement downtown, its walls plastered with vintage horror posters. Zelda, a wiry woman with electric blue hair, plugged the USB into her rig. Encrypted with a biometric lock. "Needs a fingerprint." "Whose?" Adrian asked. "Dunno, but it's not yours?" Zelda nodded at Thomas, who recoiled. "No way. If I touch that, they will trace it." Adrian gripped his shoulder. "They already know you're alive. This ends now." Thomas pressed his thumb to the scanner. Files exploded across the screens. Audio recordings, spreadsheets, a scanned will. Zelda whistled. "Bingo. Charles Harper's last testament leaves everything to Thomas, contingent on a blood sample, to confirm lineage." Martin frowned. Standard practice for large estates. But why would Vermilion care? Because the executor's a shell company. Zelda pulled up a corporate tree, its branches leading to a single name. Victor Rourke, CEO, Vermilion Financial. Adrian's jaw tightened. They planned to claim the inheritance by proving Thomas was dead. But with him alive, they're screwed, Zelda finished, unless they eliminate him before he turns 18. Which is when? 3 days, Thomas whispered. The motel room stank of bleach and regret. Evelyn Harper huddled in the corner, her wrists raw from rope burns. The man in the black mask tossed her phone onto the bed. Call the detective. Lure him here. I don't know where he is, Evelyn pleaded. The man unsheathed a knife, its edge catching the flickering neon sign outside. Then figure it out. Adrian's phone buzzed as they left the hacker's den. Unknown number. He answered, bracing for gunfire. Adrian, Evelyn's voice trembled. I need your help. I am at the Sunset Motel, room 12. Please. A muffled cry. The line went dead. Martin eyed him. Trap? Obviously. Adrian flagged a taxi, but she is alive, for now. Room 12's door hung ajar. Adrian drew his gun, pushing it open with his foot. Empty. A smear of blood trailed to the bathroom. Inside, the mirror was shattered, shards littering the sink. Written in lipstick across the glass. Midnight. Pier 7. Come alone. Martin crouched, plucking a pearl earring from the tiles. Evelyn's. She left a trail. Adrian pocketed it, or they did. Pier 7 jutted into the harbour like a rotten tooth, its planks groaning underfoot. Fog cloaked the dock, muffling Adrian's steps. A figure emerged ahead, Evelyn, gagged and bound to a post. Behind her, a masked man pressed a gun to her temple. Where's the boy? The voice was mechanized, a scrambler warping it into static. Adrian raised his hands. Safe. Let her go. The man laughed. You think this is about her? The inheritance clears at midnight. We want the blood sample. To prove he is alive and claim the money yourselves, Adrian said. But the will specifies Thomas has to submit it. You need him. Which means you won't shoot me. The scrambler hissed. Wrong. The shot rang out. Evelyn screamed as the post splintered beside her head. Adrian lunged, tackling the gunman into the water. They surfaced in a tangle of limbs, the frigid waves choking them. Adrian slammed the man's head against the pier, yanking off the mask. Mr. Greer gasped, blood streaming from his nose. You will never find... A speedboat roared to life nearby. Adrian hauled himself onto the dock, but it was already vanishing into the fog. Evelyn gone. Back at the safe house, Adrian dripped seawater onto the carpet. Thomas stared at him, hope dying. They took her? Yes. Adrian tossed Greer's wallet onto the table. IDs, credit cards, and a keycard labelled Vermilion Vault. Martin picked it up. Where'd you get this? Greer's pocket. They are stashing something. Thomas reached for it, but Adrian blocked him. No, they want you to walk into that vault. It's a kill box. Then what? Thomas's fists clenched. I let Mom die? Let them win? Adrian studied the boy, the same stubborn tilt to his jaw as Charles in the photos. We give them what they want, on our terms. How? A slow smile spread across Adrian's face. You ever play dead, kid? Chapter 4. The blood sample. The safe house hummed with tension, the dim light casting long shadows over Adrian's makeshift war table. A splintered coffee shop menu, grease-stained napkins, and Zelda's laptop glowing like a beacon. Thomas paced behind him, his sneakers scuffing the stained carpet. This is insane. Even if I fake my death, how does that help? Adrian didn't look up from the blueprints of Vermilion Tower. Because they will bring you to the vault to confirm the blood sample. And when they do, we will be waiting. With what army? Thomas snapped. They have got mercenaries, guns. We have got you. And a guy who stitches up corpses. Dr. Martin glanced up from sterilizing a scalpel. I also bake a mean scone. Adrian smacked a napkin onto the blueprint. The vault's on sub-level 3. 1 elevator access, 2 guards on rotation. Greer's keycard gets us in, but biometrics will flag any unauthorized DNA. That's where you come in. He tossed Thomas a silver cufflink. Zelda rigged it with a micro emitter. Screws with security cameras. You will have 6 minutes before they notice. Thomas stared at the cufflink. And if I am not out in 6 minutes? Then we improvise. Zelda's van reeked of burnt coffee and salter. She welded a needle-thin device into a wristwatch, sparks reflecting in her cat-eye glasses. The fake blood's a cocktail of hemoglobin, saline, and a dash of glitter for flair. Swipe it under their scanner and boom, you're legally deceased. Martin frowned. Glitter? Distracts from the chemical imbalance. Also, I like glitter. She snapped the watch onto Thomas's wrist. Press the crown twice. The needle is sterile, but try not to faint. Thomas eyed the watch like a live grenade. What if they test it twice? Then you will need a better epitaph. Vermilion Tower pierced the night sky, its glass facade shimmering like a blade. Adrian adjusted Thomas's tie in the back seat of a stolen janitorial van. Stick to the script. You're a grieving son turning yourself in to save your mother. Cry if you have to. I don't know how to cry on command, Thomas muttered. Think about your uncle's body hitting the ground. Thomas' jaw tightened. That's not funny. Wasn't a joke. Adrian shoved him out the door. The lobby guards frisked Thomas with bored precision, their hands lingering on the watch. One snorted. Nice bling. Grandpa's? Thomas forced a shaky breath. I need to see Victor Rourke. Tell him I am ready to cooperate. The guards exchanged a smirk. Sub-level 3 was a crypt of steel and fluorescent light. Thomas' shoes squeaked against the sterile floor as a guard prodded him toward a lab. Behind a glass partition, Evelyn sat slumped in a chair, her face bruised but defiant. She mouthed, I am sorry, as Thomas passed. Victor Rourke waited by the DNA scanner, his tailored suit costing more than the Harper House. Thomas, you've inherited your father's stubbornness and his stupidity. Thomas activated the watch. I want my mom released. Now. Rourke smiled. After the sample. The needle pricked Thomas's finger. He squeezed a drop of Zelda's concoction onto the slide. The machine whirred. Error. Deceased. Rourke's smile died. Impossible. Thomas lunged for Evelyn. Run! Alarms blared. Adrian and Martin burst from a service closet, tasers crackling. The guards fell, twitching. Adrian tossed Thomas a keycard. Vault's at the end of the hall. Get the will. What about Mom? Go. Evelyn stumbled after him, her chains clattering. Thomas, wait. The vault door hissed open, revealing shelves of documents and a single safe. Thomas yanked the handle. Inside lay Charles Harper's will, and a photo of Thomas as a toddler, scribbled on the back. He is not yours. Footsteps echoed. Rourke appeared in the doorway, a syringe glinting in his hand. Did you really think a glitter bomb would work? Thomas backed up. Stay away. Your father stole from me. You think faking your death erases that? Rourke advanced. The blood sample was never about the inheritance. It's about you. Your DNA. Your real father's debts. Evelyn screamed. Don't touch him. Rourke lunged. Thomas ducked, slamming the safe door into his face. Bones crunched. The syringe skittered across the floor. Adrian appeared, gun raised. Party is over, Victor. Rourke laughed through bloodied teeth. You think this ends with me? The vault's rigged. One heartbeat monitor fails. A distant click reverberated. The floor trembled. Martin shouted from the hall. Gas lines, go. Thomas grabbed the will as the ceiling erupted in flames. Chapter 5. Bloodlines and Betrayal. The explosion ripped through Vermilion Tower's sublevels, flames clawing up the elevator shaft as Adrian hauled Thomas and Evelyn through a service tunnel. Smoke stung their eyes, the screams of panicked guards echoing behind them. Martin sprinted ahead, his medical bag slapping against his hip. Left, he barked, veering into a stairwell marked Maintenance. Evelyn coughed, her grip on Thomas' arm desperate. "The will? Did you get it?" Thomas clutched the singed document to his chest. "Yeah, but Rourke said..." He said, "I am not Dad's son." Adrian kicked open a door to the parking garage. "Save the family drama for after. We survive." A black sedan screeched to a halt beside them. Zelda leaned out the driver's window, her blue hair streaked with soot. "Need a ride?" The safe house was a different one this time. A derelict bookstore, its shelves sagging under mouldering paperbacks. Martin tended to Evelyn's burns while Adrian spread the will and USB drive across a dust-covered table. Thomas hovered near the back door, staring at the photo from the vault. "He is not yours." Zelda plugged the drive into her laptop. "Data's corrupted. But there's a video file." Charles Harper's face flickered on the screen, gaunt and feverish. "If you're watching this, I am dead." And Thomas, "God, Thomas, I am sorry. I lied to you. To everyone. Vermilion didn't just want money. They wanted you. Your blood. Your DNA. Because your real father. He is Victor Rourke." The room froze. Evelyn choked out a sob. "Rourke and I were partners once." Charles continued. "He had an affair with Evelyn. When she got pregnant, he forced her to give you up. I took you in, but Rourke kept coming back. Blackmail, threats. The debt was never about the house. It was about you." Thomas backed toward the door. "No? No, that's not." Evelyn caught his arm. "It's true. I thought if I pretended you were Charles, Rourke would leave us alone. But he never stopped wanting control. That's why Daniel helped us fake the deaths, to protect you." Adrian's phone buzzed. A blocked number. A text. "You have something of mine." He showed it to Martin. "Rourke's alive." Rain sheeted against the boarded-up windows as Adrian paced. "Rourke's DNA is in the system. If Thomas is his biological son, the inheritance is void. The trust fund reverts to Vermilion." Martin frowned. "Unless we prove Rourke coerced the DNA swap." "But how?" "The photo." Thomas' voice was hollow. He flipped it over, revealing coordinates scrawled beneath. "He is not yours." "Where is this?" Zelda typed furiously. "Abandoned clinic on the waterfront. Shut down after a malpractice scandal." Adrian grabbed his coat. "Let's go." Evelyn stood. "I'm coming." "No," Thomas said coldly. "You have lied enough." The clinic's sign dangled from one chain, its letters spelling Grace Memorial. Inside, rusted gurneys and shattered vials littered the halls. Adrian's flashlight beam caught a nameplate. Dr. L. Greer. Rourke's brother-in-law, Martin realized. The bank manager. In the records room, they found a file labeled Harper T. Inside, a DNA report dated 16 years ago. 99.7% paternal match. Victor Rourke. And a receipt for £250,000 paid to Evelyn Harper. "He bought me," Thomas whispered. Adrian pocketed the file. "This proves Rourke falsified the paternity. We can use it to..." A gun cocked behind them. Evelyn stood in the doorway, her eyes hollow. "Give me the file." Thomas stared. "Mom, I am sorry. They have Daniel's body. Rourke said he will burn. Him unless I bring you in." She leveled the gun at Adrian. "I can't lose my brother too." Martin stepped forward. "Evelyn, think. Rourke killed Daniel. He will kill Thomas. I don't have a choice." Her hand shook. Adrian tossed the file at her feet. "Take it. But ask yourself, who's left to protect when everyone's gone?" Evelyn hesitated, then lunged for the file. Thomas tackled her, the gun skidding across the floor. They grappled, knocking over a shelf of glass jars. One shattered, spilling formaldehyde and a tiny preserved hand. Evelyn screamed. Thomas froze. Adrian yanked him back as the door burst open. Rourke's men swarmed in, guns raised. "Enough theatrics," Rourke said, stepping over the ruined file. He pressed a scalpel to Thomas' throat. "You're coming home, son. Chapter 6. The Final Grave." Victor Rourke's mansion loomed over the cliffs like a vulture, its gates snarled with barbed wire. Thomas sat rigid in the backseat of Rourke's armoured car, the scalpel's ghost still cold against his throat. Rourke smirked from the passenger seat, tapping the clinic file. "You will sign the inheritance over willingly, or I will peel the truth from your mother's skin." Thomas said nothing. His reflection in the window was a stranger's, Rourke's sharp jawline, Charles Harper's haunted eyes. Adrian studied the mansion through binoculars, rain sluicing off his trench coat. Martin crouched beside him, wiring a detonator to Zelda's makeshift EMP. Lob it near the security grid, and the system fries for 60 seconds, enough to get inside. Zelda hacked the mansion's blueprints on her tablet. Rourke's got a panic room underground. If he reaches it, we're toast. Adrian pocketed the detonator. Then we will make sure he doesn't. The gates creaked open, Rourke's men patting down Thomas at the entrance. One confiscated his watch, Zelda's glitter bomb still wedged in its gears. Thomas' heart stalled. No signal, no plan. Rourke led him to a vault-like study, its walls lined with taxidermied ravens. Evelyn knelt by the fireplace, her wrists cuffed to the hearth. She wouldn't meet Thomas' gaze. "Sign." Rourke slid a contract across the desk. "Or watch her burn." Thomas gripped the pen. "Why? You already have the DNA proof." "Because I want you to choose me." Rourke's smile was a scalpel's edge. "Your father grovelled. Your uncle died begging. But you will kneel because you understand power." Thomas glanced at Evelyn, a flicker of movement in her hair, a bobby pin, half hidden. He scribbled a signature. Rourke leaned in to inspect it. Thomas jammed the pen into his eye. Chaos erupted. Evelyn yanked the pin free, picking her cuffs as Rourke bellowed. Guards stormed in. Thomas ducked a bullet, diving behind the desk. Adrian's EMP grenade shattered the window, plunging the room into darkness. Muzzle flares lit up the panic. Martin tasering a guard, Zelda jamming the door locks. "The vault!" Adrian shouted, dragging Thomas toward the hall. Rourke stumbled after them, blood streaming down his face. "You will die here, Cole." The panic room door hissed open, revealing stacks of gold and the original will, Charles Harper's seal unbroken. Adrian tossed it to Thomas. "Burn it. Without this, the inheritance defaults to you." "No!" Rourke lunged, knife slashing. Adrian blocked, the blade grazing his ribs. They crashed into the vault, scattering coins. Thomas flicked Zelda's lighter. The will caught fire, its edges curling to ash. Rourke roared, throwing Adrian aside. He seized Thomas' wrist, the knife hovering. "You're mine." A gunshot echoed. Rourke crumpled, Evelyn standing in the doorway, a smoking pistol in her hands. Not anymore. Dawn bled over the cliffs as sirens wailed below. Adrian pressed a handkerchief to his side, watching paramedics load Rourke's body into a van. Evelyn sat handcuffed in a police cruiser, her face serene. Thomas approached Adrian, the ashes of the will still clinging to his shoes. "What happens now?" "The trust fund's yours. Rourke's empire collapses. And you?" Adrian nodded at Evelyn. "You decide what to forgive." Thomas stared at the twin graves in the distance, their emptiness finally a truth instead of a lie. "I think I will start by filling these in." The headstone engraver chiseled the last letter, stepping back to admire his work. Daniel Harper, beloved brother, unlikely hero. Adrian dropped a raven's feather onto the fresh soil. "You would have hated this sentimental crap." Martin tucked a scone onto the grave. "He would have hated you more for letting Evelyn take the blame." She chose her penance. Adrian lit a cigarette, watching Thomas walk away from the cliffs, the wind tearing the hood from his head. Somewhere, a new grave waited. But not today.